Hello, URL race fans, and welcome to the URL Hot Lap presented by Kingsport Tire and Auto Care Center. I'm Al Smith. Sitting with me tonight is the driver of the VTFantasyRacing.com and Arts Barbershop, number 18 of A.J. Hamill. To his right side is the number 22, Kingsport Tire and Auto Care Center, number 22 of Mike Holtzclaw. And this week, once again, the feature winner of Nicholas Rasmussen in that Hot Wheels Gap Racing number 71. Good evening, fellas.
Good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey man, glad to be here.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. We had a 125 lap event at Lanier with 26 cars this past week, and it was quite entertaining. No tires in the pits once again for I believe it is the second time this season or third time this season, and it worked out pretty well. Nick, you grabbed the NHR Pole Award, and you pretty much dominated the race, leading all 125 laps, but the action was quite fierce behind you.
Oh yeah, it was a good race for me. Me and my teammate got 1 and 2, so obviously that's very good for the team. Yeah, it may have looked like a dominant win for me when you look on the results page, but the race itself was kind of different. The long runs for me weren't that good, but I was able to keep some life in the tires, even though I was under a lot of pressure, and that paid out there at the end when we had some short runs, and I was able to really get some speed out of the car, and luckily that gave me the win.
Well, you definitely ran a smart race, but you were having quite a bit of challenges up there. You had Justin Fuller, John Ada. For a time there, you had Brian Rogers Jr. has been one of the drivers I think everybody could agree on being most improved set from last season, early on this season, as he's come out of the box pretty quick this year, but did not get the results that he was looking for. But it was a pretty entertaining race. So we had Mike, you ran up front about mid-pack most of the race, and then got caught up in some extra curricular activities on track, not of your doing. But it was a pretty clean race. I believe we only had 6 yellows and for 120, for a 125 lap event with no tires on there. Everybody pretty much minded their p's and q's. And we had a really long run in the middle of the race that saw a lot of comers and goers.
Yeah, the back in the back of the pack where I was at, it was like a hornet's nest, and I think I was just a magnet for all that could go wrong. And it really nobody's fault. It was just some good hard racing. I mean, we were bumper to bumper, door to door the whole race. For the most part, it was a real clean race, though. It's nothing you could really be upset about.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of multiple car accidents. It seemed like the one car, someone would get into someone, or someone get out of shape and lose it. A lot of 1 or 2 car incidents, but there was a few that caught up a few incidents there. And but looking at the race, I ran about mid top 10 most of the race there, and about that long green flag run that we had, the outside really started to come in. And Hamill, I know that there was a few guys that kind of tried splitting you on both sides there, but it was pretty interesting to see the guys start searching around during the 125 lap event.
Yeah, I think we got a good look at the dynamic track in full effect. There was definitely a time when I noticed some guys working a higher groove, and I moved up there, and it was better. And then 3 laps later, you had to go back to the bottom, and might have been the rubber going down, or maybe it was more the bottom lane got too hot, so you had to go up where there was a little more, where it was a little cooler, get a little more grip, and then it cooled off, and everybody back to the bottom.
It definitely was. I was stuck there behind the number 61 of Dan Dubuque during that long run. Not really stuck there. I just couldn't get a run on him. Then all of a sudden, here comes the number 2 of CJ Lavere, and he just passed Dan and I both in one corner on the outside. So I was like, oh, I got to try that. And I went up there, and like you said, for 2-3 laps, you could make some hay. And then after that, it seemed like other people would move up there, and then it started getting a little bit slippery, and then you go back to the bottom. So it was definitely interesting. I really did like that multiple grooves came in because on restarts, I felt like you could really hang on the outside. And Nick, I know that you had some challenges on the outside for about 2-3 laps on some of those late race restarts.
Yeah, for the most part, I felt like I could have the inside almost to myself. Actually, the initial start was the most difficult because I had to wait for the green light. But I got to time my restarts fairly good. So I was able to defend the bottom. Justin was difficult to keep at bay because he was really good at the high line. But for the most part, I could defend down on the low line, and that really was a key part of my race.
It definitely was a good race, and you were able to hold on and pick up your second straight victory and claim first spot in the points solely to you over Justin Fuller, who finished second. John Ada would finish third after starting ninth. Brandon Odo would finish fourth. And one guy that was the Hag TV hard charger of the race, AJ Bunch, who started 25th and drove all the way up to fifth. And I didn't really see him coming, and then he went by me, and I think he turned me, my 96 into the number 69. He went by me so fast. He ended up finishing fifth. Then Nick, your teammate and Rookie of the Year leader, Jason Stenney, finishing sixth. CJ Levere, Eric Hag, James McIntyre Jr. Finally getting able to have a good run this week, finishing ninth after the first 3-4 races not really having the finishes that team was looking for. And Hamill, you rounded out the top 10, finishing 10th. So it was a pretty entertaining race, but we did have a few post-race penalties for unclaimed cautions. It was the number 4 of Cal Frenier, who the admin team and the driver council found at fault for the wreck on lap number 5. And then the number 13, Guillaume Fortin, ended up with 3 yellows, virtue of an unclaimed wreck on lap 108 between himself and the number 12 of Brian Rogers. So that resulted in a DQ post race and rounded up finishing 18th instead of 16th. So only losing 2 spots on that. But other than that, it was a really good race, and Hamlin held on for a top 10.
Held on is the proper phrase. I noticed, I don't remember the lap numbers during the race, but I know early on I was hanging on like, hey, there's Brandon Odo when I'm on his bumper. That's pretty cool. And then Rogers flew by me on the outside and by him on the inside. I'm like, all right, that's cool. You could pass Odo, then I can't feel bad about being passed by you. And then I completely lost the handle. I could not handle the hotter, slicker track, and I was just hanging on from there. Try not to get in the way, but hold on to your spot at the same time. And benefited from a couple of spins late in the race to nab the 10th.
Well, you had a decent run, and like you said, you're able to hang on for top 10 and learn some things throughout the race. But I know that we've gotten a few questions in since last week and this week with having some post-race appeals and unclaimed cautions and how all that really works. And the driver council with you and Mike and the admin team with Nick and myself and a few others have been in discussions about this, and we just kind of want to clear some things up.
Yeah, let me see if I have it straight. Maybe put it out there for the listeners, and we'll see if everyone can have a good understanding of it. So there's 2 scenarios at play, as I see it. There's a caution that's claimed, appealed, and later overturned. What do we do with those points, and how do we apply any penalties? And then there's an unclaimed caution where we got to find somebody at fault later. And what do we do with any post-race penalties there? And the way I understand it is in a situation like last week where Nick claimed a yellow because he wasn't sure and he wanted to be safe, and therefore Fuller didn't because Nick did. And then we later decided that Fuller was at fault. So the caution point swaps. and Justin ended up with 2 for the race. But there was no 2-point penalty applied post race because caution had been claimed by Nick, and the other one that Justin caused, he claimed and took his EOL in race. The other scenario, which happened to both Guillaume and Kale, those are unclaimed by anybody. And the term unclaimed, as you've explained to me, means no one claims it. Not the guy who ultimately was at fault didn't claim it, but it is completely unclaimed by anyone in the field. And in those situations, if you're found at fault, you're getting 2 points, and the post-race penalty is applied. And in Kale's case, those were his only 2 caution points for the race, and that resulted in a 1-lap penalty, as states in the rule book. And unfortunately for Guillaume, that was 3 points, 1 from an earlier yellow, and 2 for the unclaimed, which resulted in 3 points, which, according to the rule book, is a DQ. Do I have that right, Al?
That you have it correct, Hamill. And I know it's confusing, and there's and it does say that in the rule book that an unclaimed and a claimed caution are 2 different things. So, like you definitely said last week, when Nicholas claimed a yellow, then he was able to go back and review within that 24 hours. He then appealed it, and that is a league rule that we have in place, that we have the appeal process, because we do want people to claim cautions. We don't want to sit and have to hand out, a big whack like we had to this week with Cal Frenier and Guillaume Fortin. So I think that's the main takeaway is, claimed caution, whether it's the person at fault or not. Um, we're gonna look at it, to a point if it's brought up to us. If it's claimed and no one's really throwing a fit about it, then we're not going to really overlook it. I look at everything after the race, but I don't really want to act on anything unless there's an appeal process that is formally brought to the league, and then we present that, and then we go through all the litigation that we do with that. But if someone claims a yellow, I don't feel, and the league doesn't feel when we wrote the rules this year, that we can assess um, an appeal wouldn't make it unclaimed. Since someone already claimed it, they're pretty much saying, I don't want the caution point. I don't feel it was at fault. And the caution point would then just reverse, because we can't reverse what we do in race. So that's the only downfall, is that someone had to take an EOL in race, but at the end of the day, they won't have that caution point going forward.
Well, that's, better safe than sorry. A lot of time, unless you've got a live spotter, you really can't tell what you did. You can just hope you were right. But we can't get them all right every time right away. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast.
Right, and I agree with you, and I think going through this process with both the admin team and the driver council, which is doing a great job this season. It's something that we implemented, and when we really implemented it, we weren't really sure how big of a role or what role that would all be, but they've been a vital part to making everything really run as smooth as we've had for the first 5 races. So, I really value their input and how they understand things, and we've had some heated discussions, and I think it's made for a better clarification and things where I feel as the league president, I need to make more black and white, and we are going to work on that. And like I said, we strive to make it fun. We're not trying to zero anybody out or be like, hey, you're a wrecker or whatever. We want you guys to show up and have fun and know that it's fair. And like you said, we don't get everything 100% right, because you got that human nature or the human aspect in it, or not, everything's done by computers or automation. So that's why we have the appeal process. If I spin you out and it's later found and I appeal it, the caution point goes to you. That's all that matters. Uh, so that's the main difference. If it's unclaimed, that means nobody's claimed it, and an unclaimed caution will result in a post-race penalty, like it has this week.
Clear as mud.
So we're going to try to make that as clear as black and white, and we're going to update the rule book during the Thanksgiving break and get that all updated and let everybody really know, this is what it is. But pretty much, if you're 50-50 on it, yeah, you're going to take an in-race penalty. But at the end of the day, you can get that penalty point reversed, and like Nick did. So with that, we should take a look at the results, or not the results, but the standings from after 5 weeks of racing. As we get headed to our sixth way, we got Nicholas Rasmussen, who sits in with us tonight. Nick, you got a 4-point lead over Justin Fuller, Jason Stenney. Stefan Marinac, who had to take a provisional this week, got to the track just a little bit too late, and I really hated that for him. But he got caught up with some stuff, wasn't able to make the race. John Ada sits fifth. Brandon Odo jumps from 12th up to 6th. Hamill, you sit 7th. CJ LeVere, Brian Rogers, Al Smith Jr., JD Callahan, and Dale O'Neill rounding out the top 12. And we have Guillaume Fortin, who is 1 point out of 12th. Justin McDuff sits 3 points out. Alex Orion, 17 points out. And AJ Bunch and Dan Dubuque are both tied back there in 16th, 18 points out. So I think making it inside the chase is definitely going to be a tall task. And like Mike said, he hasn't really jumped out to the best of starts this season, but you're not that far from the cutoff, Mike.
If I can have a good run these next couple races, it'll definitely help out. That group that I'm around there, like Eric Spencer and Travis Wallace, Dylan Gaudette, all those guys are real good, and we usually race near each other all the time. So it's going to be hard to pick up spots. I just got to try to avoid the big ones and just have some good finishes for the next couple races.
And this week we head out to California. It's our only West Coast swing of the season, and we do it right before an off week. So we're going to be traveling all the way from Bracelet, Georgia, all the way out to Irwindale, California. So long haul for you guys in the race teams. But as we look forward to Irwindale, it's kind of a shorter version or different layout version of Lucas Oil that we ran earlier this season. The race will be ran in the afternoon. What kind of challenges, Nick, does Irwindale present?
Well, you can run the high line there. In fact, you can run quite a few lines there. I think with the high track temperature that we might expect there, it's gonna be slick out there, and it's gonna be interesting to see the different lines come into effect there, especially as we get a group there. So I think we'll see quite a few people protecting the high line, and then some people trying to go for lower line to attack. So I think we will have a very exciting race there.
It'll definitely be a good one. And Hamill, as we were talking earlier at Lanier, we had the dynamic track really come into play. Do you think we'll see that at Irwindale, where maybe the top will get so hot that you can't really do anything, and you'll see the bottom start coming in?
I do. I think we're going to see a mixture of, or maybe we saw it IRP and we didn't realize it, or maybe we were under yellow so much it never got hot. But I'm going to say, I hate to use the word afraid, but I'm afraid it's going to be another IRP. As far as, yeah, you can run the top and defend, and then the guy in the bottom's going to go low, and they're going to meet in the middle, and there's going to be problems. But let's hope that I'm just pessimistic, and we'll be able to mind their P's and Q's and give some space. And I think it's going to be a big track position race, especially with no tires.
Yeah, we got 127 laps, but making the field is going to be quite difficult. Mike, this week we're going to attempt to have another B main as long as we get enough cars to show up. Last week we had 4 provisionals, which really prevented us from running a B main to set the 24 car field. But this week we're going to have a B main that runs, and We're gonna have the lone qualifying locking the top 18 on time trials in. Nobody's safe, so some of these guys that are inside the top 12 in points, they're not locked into the field. But does that add any extra pressure to some of the guys that are on the outside looking in, trying to make sure that they get locked in on time trials?
I believe it definitely does, especially for me. I mean, I'm terrible at qualifying. Last week during practice for the last race, I was running top 10 in practice, and on qualified I was like 23rd. So it's definitely on my mind. I think I'm going to work on just trying to win the B main because I don't think I'm going to make it there in qualifying. But it's definitely a lot of pressure.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens as we go out to the Irwindale. We'll be running the outer under the afternoon this coming week. And as we get ready to move on to Irwindale, we're going to throw the checkered flag for last week. And on the show is we got a new segment brought to you by VTFantasyRacing.com to end the show, and it's called the VTFantasyRacing.com Checkered Flags of the Week. So, Hamill, we'll let you start off with a couple of the checkered flags that you saw from Lanier.
Okay. Yes, we stole this from a popular radio show, but you know what? If they listen and send us a cease and desist, I'm gonna take that as a win. So here's some guys. I also want to throw out some headache awards. Let's throw that first, and start with the bad and end with the good. And some guys that don't get talked about as much. Oh, we hear about Nick. Nick, you're still winning. I think you're still leading right now. You're still leading laps out there. That's a joke, by the way, not meant to be. I want to say some other guys' names. So some mini headache awards. I want to throw Justin McDuff. Poor kid didn't even get to sit down. Had an issue he had to tend to and didn't get to take the green flag, and he came out anyway and rode around after he got back and got wadded up there. Tough day for him. Left him outside the chase, but not too far out, so he's still got time to recover. Another tough luck week went to you, Al. You worked your way up. Oh, I'm not even on the results page anymore because you surprised me with the order here. Where'd you start? You started sixth. All right,
I started sixth. Yeah,
that's right. You did your normal act of back and front, but anyway, you deserve better than you got. You got caught up in someone else's mess, and then got a little love tap and ended up 15th. You certainly deserved better than you ended up with. But the big bad luck trophy goes to Brian Rogers, who started 10th, and on one restart, I thought, oh, all right, I'm on the inside, he's on the outside. Well, as I'm watching the car in front of me, I'm also watching Brian fly by me. And then, as I said earlier, make the move to the bottom and fly by the guy in front of me. And I noticed on the broadcast later, he was up pressuring Fuller and Nick for the lead. Just a great run for Brian, and unfortunate that he got nudged while running fourth, and then more solid contact later sent him to the back or out of the race, I guess, maybe to say. I guess he was still running, but 16 laps down. Definitely deserved better than he got. How about some good stuff? Where are we going to start? AJ Bunch sighting. Poor AJ. I guess not poor AJ. He, on his own accord, has to start in the back every week because of some other things that he's doing in his life. But this week he made it through the field and went from 25th to 5th. So I'll check and flag a bunch for making it through the tough field there. No tires, no strategy. Just made it around. What was the other one I was looking at? Eric Hag, another nice finish, 20th to 8th. Stayed out of trouble. Good day for him. And James McIntyre, like you mentioned earlier, I was thinking to myself, Al, you're stealing my segment.
I try not to do that.
James, let's call him a new nickname, Big Mac, comes through the field and finally survives the messes and brings home a nice top 10 finish.
Yeah, he definitely. I would have to agree with that. Any Mike, is there anybody else that deserves a checkered flag or a Goodies headache award other than yourself?
Oh,
You seen?
is Goodies paying us?
Well, I don't know. We tried their product. when
Oh,
we were
that's
in
right.
Martinsville, and I
I'll
still
give it a
haven't
good review.
recovered.
No, it was spectacular. It was excellent. Send more.
It was something. But other than yourself, Mike, is there anybody else that gets the headache award or a checkered flag that Hamill didn't cover?
My checkered and checkered flag goes to Brian. I mean, he's been tough this year, and he just had some bad luck last week. Uh, Both of my flags really go to him this week. He just had a good week to a terrible week in just a matter of 2 laps, and it's really threw him down in the standings for this last race. Other than that, I mean, there's a lot that you can throw out there. Probably one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. He runs almost every week, and it would have to be Mike Fortier. It's the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. I met him at Martinsville. Super nice guy. He's not the fastest out there, but he's one of the nicest guys that we have running in this league.
I will agree with that. Yeah, Mike. He qualifies decent, enough to get into the show, and I feel, and he's one of those boys that's just there to have a good time, and unfortunately, he seems like he gets wadded up in everybody else's messes or whatnot. Him and Jay Dubuque, I feel are the not in the same caliber by any means, but um, I'm just gonna stop there.
Yeah, Rex had a tough week too. um, Usually given a lot of room, another new guy to the league, and I'm looking at the results, and he got wadded up in a couple of incidents too. Oh, and by
Right.
the way, anybody who did well and I didn't mention you, Rasmussen, Fuller, Ada, that's because you guys are good and everybody knows you're good.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Exactly. If I don't mention you in this segment, it's a compliment. CJ, Denny.
Yeah, I mean it was a good race overall, and I think I look back at last year's race at Irwindale, and it was a pretty good race. I mean, I didn't really think nothing really sticks out in my mind, which is usually a good thing. That nothing sticks out in my mind is we went to Irwindale last year, the same week, and Justin Fuller won that. We had 3 lead changes and 7 cautions last year. This year's race is brought to you by Atomic Signworks. It's the Atomic Signworks 127. As John Ada
No, that Ada.
brings in the oddball number race again. So we got those 2 extra laps. It was supposed to be 125 laps. He's like, let's make it 127. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but those 2 extra
Surprised he
laps
didn't
might
ask
make
you
a
to make it
difference.
127 and a half.
He really wanted 3/4, but I said we couldn't do that. And this is why I do not tour as a comedian.
Oh, sorry. I was chuckling. I didn't have my mic keyed.
But I think it'll be a good race. Make sure you tune in right here on the website at www.upstateracingleague.com. And the show would not be possible without our great friends at Kingsport Tire and Auto Care Center. Winter is coming. Make sure you get those winter tires. Mike, you guys have anything going on as for specials down at the shop?
Do you get winter in Tennessee, Mike?
It gets pretty cold down here. I would say it's nothing like what you guys get up that way, but it's cold enough for me. I wouldn't mind living a little further south, to be honest with you. But as far as specials and stuff go, it's now's the perfect time to come in and make sure your coolant's topped off to the right level, and make sure it's good and it can handle the cold temps that we do get around here. And one of the things that people overlook a lot is the state of your battery. While it's still kind of warm outside, you might not have a problem. But those are cold mornings when it's down to 20 or so. That's when it's really going to show up, and it could leave you stranded, make you late to work. So now's definitely a good time to get in and get that thing checked.
And that's the perfect place right down there in Kingsport, Tennessee. So if you're around the area, make sure you stop in. Is a big supporter here at the Upstate Racing League, and we got to thank you, and everybody down at the shop for making all that possible, Mike. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to have this show every week, and we wouldn't be able to have some of the broadcasts, as this past week's race was brought to you by you guys So I think we have one more up on the schedule left coming later on in the schedule, which will be in December. And we got two more races for Kingsport Tire and Auto Center. So a big supporter. I want to thank you guys again. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us this season.
Oh, it's our pleasure. There's nothing better than putting our name behind a well-run league with some quality drivers. It really helps us too.
Well, we appreciate it, and I think that'll be a wrap for tonight's shows. The checkered flag has come out as we all pretty much have somewhere to be, but for
Nick led every lap again.
again, I know we're gonna have to put a weight penalty on that 71.
Well, we'll just have to see, and if I can do it again. If I do it again next week, you get to put a weight penalty on me. But
Oh, you heard it here, guys.
I just wrote that down, and we have it in recording.
because honestly, I'm not gonna underestimate the competition here. I know it's gonna be a tough race. It's gonna be a fun race. We got a lot of strong guys out there. So I fully expect to have my work cut out.
I'm looking forward to our first lead change in a no tire race.
I think
Let's
we'll
see if you
definitely
guys
see
can
it.
get that done.
I think we'll see it. I mean, it would almost happen in Lanier, but Nick drove a Mack truck out front there.
Yeah.
And that's why you're not a comedian.
Apparently,
All right.
it's
Wrap
tough
it up.
love.
We're going to practice.
Tough love here. Tough love.
3
But
minutes
yeah.
to practice.
So anyway, check out our website at upstateracingleague.com. Check out all of our great sponsors. Give us a like on Facebook. Give them a like on Facebook and on Twitter. But for AJ Hamill, Nicholas Rasmussen, and Mike Holtzclaw, I'm Al Smith, and we'll see you at the track.